Hey champs, it's Michael J, your Yoga Biz champ. And on today's episode, it's a special one because it's actually another podcast swap. So this time I teamed up with my friend Francesca Cervero, host of the Mentor Sessions podcast, for a deep dive into what really makes yoga studios and teachers thrive in today's industry. I've been doing a lot of talking about the teacher side of things. Francesca has been teaching yoga full-time for over 20 years. She runs a training called The Science of the Private Lesson, and she mentors many teachers to develop their own authentic teaching voice. Together we talk about how the yoga industry has changed, why community studios are making a comeback, and why your studio is only as strong as your teachers. Yes, I said it. We also dig into the idea of point of view. So how it shows up in both teaching and in your studio, and why it's so much more powerful than trying to niche down. So if you're a studio owner who's building a team or a teacher trying to clarify your voice, this episode will give you a lot to think about. So let's jump in. Here's my conversation with Francesca.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We have a unique episode for you. This is my first time doing a podcast swap with a friend. So for those of you who don't know, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Francesca Cervero. I'm the host of the Mentor Sessions podcast, which is for yoga teachers. And I have with me here my friend Michael, who has a podcast, Yoga Biz Champ. We're going to talk today all things yoga industry, the changes we've seen, yoga studios, what makes them successful or not. And we got introduced through our friends and partners at Offering Tree. So I'm really grateful to be getting to know you, Michael. So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Michael J. I have been a teacher of yoga for probably close to 23 years. So I go way back teaching. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. I owned a yoga studio called Open Space Yoga, which I sold over 8 years ago, which is now on its third owner and in its, I think, 22nd year. So really, it's a really lovely legacy to see that still existing. And after I sold it, my background prior to owning a studio and becoming a teacher was marketing. That was my training. So I got certified at the time by Mind Body and became a consultant in our field. And a lot of my counterparts have kind of gone into boutique fitness, which, has Legree and Pilates and all of those things. And I'm like, I don't speak that language. I'm very dialed in on, just like you are, and yoga. Like I speak the language and so I know the language. And so I'm very much, I do business consulting for either yoga studios or potential yoga studios. Quite often a passionate yoga teacher that's looking to start a studio. And so I hope to help them fast track that and not make all the mistakes. And I have a podcast like yourself, Yoga Biz Champ, which I think is my best free resource, which is just great conversations with rocking yoga studio owners or industry experts. And I'm really grateful to have met up with you too, because prior to this, we really jammed a lot about the teaching industry and how a lot of studios can learn from that. And so we had a great conversation of like, we gotta have this conversation. So Francesca, tell my audience, Yoga Biz Champ, because we're doing this podcast buddy thing, more about you.
Sure. So I, like yourself, have been a yoga teacher for a long time. I've been a full-time teacher. It's been my full-time income for 20 years as of this summer. So that's a cool milestone to hit. I have most of that time worked with a lot of private clients. That's what made my teaching practice financially really sustainable, but also have always taught and loved to teach group classes. In about 2012, I started mentoring and training teachers in what I call the science of the private lesson. I have a whole teacher training based on that topic, and then kind of expanded my mentoring to teachers when I started my podcast in 2017 to include anything that growing yoga teacher would need to study, learn, deepen in their understanding to become a more evolved, more clear, more specific, more confident teacher.
Yeah.
So now I work still a lot with private clients. About 2/3 of my business revenue comes from that. And then just one virtual group class a week. And then my work with teachers is sort of the final third of my business.
Yeah, and I think where the conversation with you really interests me from my audience, which is on the yoga studio side, because the two, it's usually, if it's not an investor, it's a teacher dreaming of opening a yoga studio. And I, as a studio owner, mentored a lot of teachers, and what I did know was right out of teacher training, they weren't ready. Weren't fully ready. And on the other side of things, I also say to my studio owners that they have one thing that they control, and that is the client experience, the customer experience, the class experience, pre-class, in-class, post-class. And I think part of that is the magic formula to a busy class is right time, right style, but right teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to, as studios, we have to be helping our teachers be better.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we had some great conversations about where you've worked with one of my studio clients that's been on my podcast, Samantha from Yoga Strong. And you go in and you also help teams as well at studios. But let's talk about, I'd love to hear your point of view about what makes a great teacher.
What makes a great teacher? Yoga is so vast. The practice, there's so much to it. There's so many different ways that it can be taught. There's so many different things in a yoga teaching and a yoga practice that can be emphasized. And so I have worked with and mentored and been friends with hundreds, I don't know, at this point, 20 years in, 1,000, I don't know, a lot of teachers who have all been so different from one another, based on what they get out of the practice, what they're interested in, what their personal skill set is, the demographic that they end up working with and what they need. So there's endless sort of variability and variation. But I think as teachers continue to teach, grow and deepen their teaching, get more experience, what we want to start to see emerge is a really clear point of view, is a sort of foundational viewpoint that their teaching starts to kind of organize around. Not that you necessarily leave out entire parts of the practice that would be good for your students or that are an important part of the roots of yoga or the history of yoga, but that you develop a teaching voice that's uniquely yours. And that takes a long time. It takes a lot of inquiry, which is what I love to do with teachers. And in my podcast is really like be in inquiry with people about what they care about, what they think is most important to get across to their students, the unique way that they can do that, and then what resonates most with their students. So it's a lot of being in inquiry about, why am I teaching this way? Is this the most helpful, accessible, interesting, root honoring way to teach this? And if not, how do I want to shift it and change it? So it's about being in inquiry with your teaching to deepen it.
So let's backpedal to something you said there, that the words have actually sat in my brain since we spoke last. And I was just on the guest with Rebecca Sebastian's Working in Yoga podcast. And I what you said was point of view. And so we'll talk later about the studio point of view, but from a teacher point of view. So in business world, we might call that niche some way, but I love those words. Like, what's your point of view? Can you expand on what you think on that a little bit?
I think the way that online marketing has been taught to yoga teachers, the way it got kind of filtered down to our community, did focus a lot on niche. And maybe it's a semantics issue. Like maybe we are all talking about the same thing, or I think you and I are talking about the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But the way a lot of people hear that is they think they need to, in their teaching, niche down to a particular
We only
audience,
do Ashtanga. We only do Iyengar. We only.
or it's like they are speaking to like a surface level demographic. Like I'm a yoga teacher who works with moms in their 40s who are feeling like very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, probably the tools of yoga that you have and the interesting, unique way that you communicate them could support a lot of people that don't fall into that service level demographic. So it's sort of like, are you niching down based on the surface level demographic of the audience you're trying to serve? Or are you niching down, or what I would say, developing a point of view about who you are as a teacher and what you prioritize, and what you care about, and the unique way that you communicate that?
Well, and the why too, right? And if we go back to our common friend Samantha Yoga Strong, her studio 40 plus yoga plus strength, and she does this because she has a why behind it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. What she felt in classes and what she felt there was a need for, and she. So anyway, but it comes from what was important to her.
Exactly. And what was important to her based on what she saw in her teaching of her students. Yeah. Like it comes from you in relationship with your students, like seeing what you think works, what you think is most important, what you think is most interesting in the way that your students respond to it. So it's like your point of view as a teacher is, I think, co-created with the people that you're teaching. So it's not something you do like at your house in your little cozy chair with your journal. What's my point of view? It's only when you get put in a teaching situation that feels too challenging because you have too many people and not enough props, or there are mirrors on the walls and you can't, or you're outside and there's like bugs and grass. It's like you're teaching at a gym and there's so much noise coming from outside. When you're put in a yoga teaching situation that you feel not prepared for, you can't do everything that you maybe think you want to do. So you have to prioritize. What do I most want to communicate in the teachings of yoga to the people who are here right now? And it's through that practice that I think your teaching voice gets clarified.
Yeah. When I work with studio owners, I'm always about triple down on the things that are your superpowers, the things that you love doing, that you're naturally good at. Triple down on those and hire out for the things that you feel stuck, don't move the needle forward. But it's the same thing in teaching. Like, what's my thing? Like, I knew when I taught yoga for men that I could fill that class, first of all, with my marketing, because I was that audience. And I could communicate with that audience of how I felt in my body. Right. Yeah. Tight hips, hamstrings, low back. I mean, a lot of generalizing there, but but I could communicate to those men what I felt in my body. And so that's what's made them come back every week. Yeah. Right. And I think, the advice that I always give to new teachers is to take a teaching gig that feels too hard. Yeah. And I think actually teaching in a gym where you don't have all the props you might want to have, or you don't have the beautiful, quiet container already created, or taking a gig where you're like teaching on concrete outside during like a summer series, something like that. It is going to be hard. So how do you handle that? The way that you handle things that feel too hard is how your point of view and your unique teaching style comes out, because everybody can handle that differently. Yeah. Like you have squishy mats, but no props. You're outside, you have a huge range of people and ability and what they're looking for. So, okay, do you just like stay laying on the ground and do like a very ground, or do you have everybody standing and never come down to the ground because getting down and up is too hard, and then like the sort of like
path you take is like who you become as a teacher, and you get to decide, what your voice is.
Back in the day, I took my teacher training. First of all, I was shy and, had stage fright. And my teacher taught me into taking the teacher training because my interest was so great. But after the teacher training, I wasn't ready. I did a year-long apprenticeship, and it was brutal. It was like, Michael, you're saying this word too much. Michael, you do. Michael, but she taught me how to see, which I think it makes a good teacher. She taught me how to see what's in the room, and that it's okay to stop the class and do a general, hey, let's take a look at this kind of thing. But she threw me in with beginners. So when you say about fear, she threw me in with beginners, and that's the hardest.
By far.
If you can learn how to teach beginners and realize that your words, what you're saying and what they're doing may be two different things, right? But if you can learn on beginners, you feel like you can teach anybody.
Well, because then you really know how to teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
love to zoom out a little bit and just think about the sort of industry as a whole. You and I have both been in it for a long time. Are there any sort of trends that you've seen in terms of like the yoga culture, yoga studios that are kind of all encompassing in the last 23 years, or is it too fragmented?
Well, no. Well, let's take a look at how it used to be. So I go back to the 90s, early 90s in yoga. So when I started, here in Vancouver, there was the Ashtanga studio, there was the Iyengar studio. So you're talking about having a point of view. They had a very strong point of view.
Definitely, yeah.
And then and also my teacher, Joy Irwin, who is she was the teacher of all teachers in Vancouver that became good teachers, a lot of people's foundation. She taught out of her basement, strata basement, and we paid for months in advance. So we paid for a series or a term. And so that's how it used to be. It was punch passes, like literal punch passes.
Yeah, just like I had one of those too.
Pass. Yeah, like I had a box with punch passes at the studio, and we literally punched them, and we had a book, and I hired a full-time person to track those. Anyway, it was a lot. But so what happened was we had community studios. Then the investors came in and started more, investor franchise type models, and they started the all-you-can-eat formula.
And when do you see that in the timeline? Like when did
that was in mid-90s?
Really? That already had started happening? But it wasn't everywhere, because like when I started practicing yoga in like 2001. Well, a little before that, but really regularly in 2001 in Philly. Those were like locally owned community yoga studios. I didn't see the really big franchises until like, I don't know, mid-2000s, 2005, 2008.
Maybe late
but I hear
90s,
you that it started in the 90s.
Well, they changed it, and then the community studio had to go, we have to offer all you can eat too.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where the intro offer was invented, the unlimited yoga, and we had, so things changed during that time. And so we've run that course for a while, and I feel like a lot of the studios became all you can eat yoga, trying to serve everybody. And so now you've got this mix of big franchises that are offering up, 15, 20 classes a day, ridiculous amount of classes and value to the membership. And then you've got the community yoga studio trying to keep up with that. And ClassPass, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But what I'm seeing is I don't think I represent the yoga studio industry. I think I represent the community yoga studio. That was what was my studio. And I think that's a lot of the people that are drawn to me in the studios I work with, the community studios. And so what I'm seeing now is, honestly, I love your words, point of view. Right. So like you can now offer general, but what is your point of view? Like, who is your audience? Can you give that an avatar? Can you speak to that person? It makes marketing a lot easier but I have a studio in Australia, and she's an Indian lady. She purchased this yoga studio. For the longest time, it wasn't hers. It was like she had the old teachers, she had the previous students that were really into the previous owner's point of view. It's taken a long time as she's rehired over the years into her ways. And now it's her studio, and she can offer what she calls authentic yoga in her voice. And she can mentor her teachers to, have a structure similar to hers, not teach the same way, but be under her point of view now from the studio. So I'm overusing that, but I'm loving instead of using the word niche, I really love that. And so I'm seeing we're going back to that now. And at the same time, we've got these community studios, but we also now, as a community studio, we have franchise level tools. We're both partnered with Offering Tree, right? I've worked with them for a while now, and I was like, I can't bring studios over to you to have automations of email and SMS and all. Now they have all of that. Web page builder, booking systems, taking credit cards, appointments. And for me, the most important thing is the automations. Like, we have these incredible tools, not for just selling, but for building community and enhancing the client journey. So I think we have to get back to, I work with a lot of studio owners and we do team training as well. It's not about the owner. It's not about the teacher. It's about the customers. Who are we serving? And it's about how can we enhance that client experience, the customer journey, pre-class, during class, post-class. And so we have a space. We can do good work with a space. We can do good community work with a space. So I'm just seeing that I feel like, I don't know if I've people I'm working with, it's like, they do the hard work on our why. Like, that's almost, it's like therapy, doing your mission, vision, and values, and it sounds generic and marketing and what have you, but we have to know those things and who are we serving, and we don't have to serve everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you can't.
Yoga for everybody. I mean, I feel like that was overused now and
definitely.
Yeah. But no, yoga for who?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how much of it is sort of location dependent too. So I'm on the East Coast of the United States. I've been in Philly, New York, DC for the last 20 years. And I've seen a slightly different shift. I'm not sure. It's like when I started practicing yoga, all the studios that I went to were locally owned, almost exclusively founded by a teacher who had a really strong foundational view of like what good quality teaching looks like and what we do here at this studio. Yeah. And I loved that model as a student and as a teacher, because you knew when you were going to a studio, any particular studio, what the vibe was going to be. And what it meant was, because almost all of those studios had their own teacher training, was that you could go to any teacher's class. You were like a little bit less dedicated to a single teacher as you were to a studio. And so that meant, like, some days you could go to the morning class, some days you could go to the lunchtime class, sometimes you go to the evening class. And you really had a sense of community, because that's where you practiced and that's where I taught. And I just loved that. And I thought, it seemed to me from that point in my career as a new young teacher that really worked well. I mean, those classes back then were packed. I'm talking like mat to mat to mat.
Inch in between.
Wait list. Not even touching on all four sides. New York City, listen, the mats were touching. You know what I mean? The mats were touching.
Sweat was flying.
Yes, definitely. And then what it seemed to me like happened was the business community realized that there was a lot of money to be made in in the yoga world and started investing and started, as you said, like opening these big franchises, which interestingly, as we're talking about this, I'm reflecting like a lot of those big franchises do have a pretty specific point of view. That's why their marketing is easy. You know, a lot of them were like exercise. Their point of view was exercise. It's like, whatever, that's fine. But, you know, and then I also started to see more locally owned studios cropping up, but often by much newer, younger teachers who somehow had access to capital or something and didn't really have a super clear point of view. So, but they were trying to compete with like these big franchise studios that offered a lot of classes at low cost. So the way it seemed like they were doing that was to have no clear viewpoint of the studio, but to have Kundalini and Ashtanga and hot rocket flow, whatever, and to like have a million different potential options. But there was never, you know, there wouldn't be a student that would go to like any class there. As a student, you'd go to maybe one class once a week there because that was the class that you liked, but there wasn't anything that you were like particularly invested in, like learning and studying and being a part of at a place like that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like a lot of those places closed during the pandemic.
Yep.
And now I can't quite tell what's emerging back, but maybe as you're saying, it is back to this like slightly more old school, a teacher with a point of view says like, this is what we do here. We'd love to have you if this vibes with you. That, I think that would be great if that's what's happening.
I never told my teachers how to teach though, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things is if people are coming to multiple classes in the client experience, there has to be a level of expectation in the customer experience. So what I never wanted in a studio was to hear, oh, I love Jessie's class, except she always skimps. I only get 2 minutes of Shavasana and I get 10 minutes in yours, right? I was like, you need to have a structure so that the client experience, I'm not going to tell you what to teach, but it's 5 minutes meditation. It's at least 10 minutes of warm up. It's, you know, a certain amount of flow and a level of expectation for a Shavasana. I think that
I like that. I think that's good. And I think that is you telling them what to teach. And I think that's okay. I think you should own that. You're like, this is how we do this here.
But not telling them the content. What I mean is not telling them the content. I mean, I had one teacher, Jess, who was unlike any of my other teachers. She came into class on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. and did a rocking hard Hatha Flow class. And she spoke to them like truckers. F words, like that was not something that was not something about my vibe. However, she was authentic to Jess.
Yeah.
And people came because they loved Jess. It was like going to the Church of Jess every Sunday morning. She was like, I'm on the mat, follow me, hear me roar, do what I say. Like she had very confident and people just loved following her. So she had a real point of view.
Yeah.
But what do you think makes those people, those point of view people, class builders?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's partly just consistency. You know, like to some extent, you have to put your stake in the ground at the day and time you want to teach and say, like, this is what I'm doing right now. And then the people who like it will come and stay, you know? I mean, I've been teaching Friday at 10:30 since 2014. And I have a lot of the same students that I've had since 2014. But because it's Friday at 10:30, it was like people would come once on a random day and then like I'd not see them for several months. And then they'd come back and it turns out that they've like rearranged their work schedule to have every other Friday off so that they can come to my class, you know? So, I mean, I think to some extent in terms of building class, it's like, and we can talk about more about what I think good quality teaching looks like. That is my point of view. Not everybody's going to agree with me about that, but I think just like having a point of view, which is only something you can develop over time. This is not a brand new teacher thing.
I mean, that's important to realize is that a teacher, when they come out, you're often emulating another teacher or one of your teachers, right?
Yeah.
Until there's one day it becomes your point of view. I think, and that's just practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But why do those people on Fridays at 10:30 keep coming back to you?
Well, I think I have a sort of unique style that again, it's just developed over 20 years where there's sort of like equal emphasis placed on a few different aspects of yoga that I really value, that people are more likely to sort of focus only on one. Like one of my specialties, and this comes from a lot of working with private clients, is to be able to see and understand movement patterns, in particular like suboptimal movement patterns. Like I can see if someone doesn't have like a full range of motion of flexion in their right hip, but they do in their left, and then I'll like make a particular sequence to address that. So I can I'll give them like specific modifications on one side that I don't give on the other to like help them work through that. So it's like very hyper specific anatomy, biomechanics, kind of body teaching and understanding and sequencing and prep work. So that's one piece of it. But then I also am a student of Buddhism and of the Dharma, and I bring a lot of those deep teachings into my practice. And I also I'm very fired up right now about what I think the teachings would say about what's happening in our world, particularly in my country, which is on fire. And so I'm not giving huge lectures, but people know where I stand, and we sort of will touch briefly on what I think the teachings would say about that.
You've attracted aligned people.
I guess so. Yeah. And so, so it's just like three somewhat unique aspects of the teaching. And then I also I was a dancer, and so I like to like flow and breathe and move and exercise. And so it's sort of like kind of a somatic functional movement kind of practice with Dharma in like a fun breath-based vinyasa package. It's unique.
Talked about what's your differentiator.
Yeah.
Right. From other, and people are attracted to that differentiator.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do you think they keep coming back? It's because I always say that the magic formula to a class is teacher, time, and style. Mm-hmm. And if you're not hitting all three parts on that, one part needs fixing.
Yep, totally. Right.
Quite often it's the teacher.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, so I started teaching at 10:30 in 2014. And for months, there were like 2 or 3 people. So the advice but that was just because like people didn't know me. I was teaching at a studio that until, I guess maybe it was 2013. Anyway, until like a year before I had started teaching had been the biggest Anusara studio in the world. And then Anusara crumbled. And I'm pretty sure I was the first non-Anusara teacher that they hired. So people didn't know me. They didn't know anything about vinyasa, which was my training. They didn't know anything about Buddhism. Like I was just like this weirdo who taught on Fridays at 10:30. So it was small for a really long time. But then people would like try it out. And I realized we had to do some sort of education about my style of teaching, because I give a lot of like suggestions, modifications, but it's never a correction, because I don't believe in a linear hierarchical like way of seeing asana. Like I don't think there's a safer version or a better version or an ideal version. There's only the version that right in this moment is more useful to you as a person. But people were used to getting like corrected to try to be better. So when I would give them modifications, like they'd freeze and I'd be like, so anyway, I had to do a lot of education to help them realize like, no, man, you're good. Like I love it. I just like think you might like this better. But that took a long time to like kind of create that community. And then I think, so it was small for a long time. The advice I always give to teachers, if they're teaching what they want to teach, when they want to teach it, where they want to teach it, and they can afford to keep it for a year before they change it. I have a whole formula. It has like 8 questions. Should I keep this class or should I let it go?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that for a studio, but with the overhead. But
as a studio owner, you have to be more ruthless. But if a teacher has the option to keep it, then I think that they should.
I want to backpedal to something you said within that. And that was when you're teaching with what you see, what makes a good teacher. Right. And for me, I mentioned before, I think what made me a great teacher was I saw the room. I looked at the room. I was not on my mat. It was in my onboarding document for my other teachers that I didn't want them stretching or flowing on their mat before class. Like, we're a teaching environment. I want you looking at the students and addressing the students by name and building those relationships within the space before class, after class, but during class. But what you said there about being a good teacher is seeing, I think.
Right. That's what actual teaching is. Like teaching is relationship, right?
It's
If you're
not on
on
a
your
mat doing a
mat,
U2 flow.
no, that's lecturing, that's instructing. You can get as a student a lot out of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As a teacher, you can learn a lot about yourself creatively by going through that process. I just don't think that's teaching. Like, I think to be teaching, you have to be watching. And so that's what it sounds like you were trained to do. Like, you spent that year in apprenticeship getting feedback about how you were communicating. That's incredible. Most people don't get that. I'm sure that made a huge difference for the quality of your teaching. And then, I'm sure that's a huge part of what made your studio successful is like part of your point of view is we actually teach here.
Yeah. I was so okay with looking at a room of 30 people and going, oh, a few people are doing this. All right, let's start the class. Let's workshop start. Let's take a look at this. Let's go back and play with it. Like,
totally.
People love that. It's not like,
right.
like it's okay to stop the class and let's globally address these things and take a look and can we make this feel better?
Yeah, well, it's called learning. It's like either like are people like studying and learning and are you teaching or are you putting them through a workout?
Yeah.
It's just not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not. And I think that's the class builder.
I think so too. I mean, some people want to work out. I don't know. I mean, I think like there are these like big franchises that are all about exercise that people like love.
Yep.
Right? Boutique fitness is doing great. Like it's thriving.
Sure.
So, obviously there are people who are interested in that. And so people like that, if people like being in that environment as a teacher or as a customer or as a student, it's fine. Great. Like, you do what you got to do. Life is hard. If you want to exercise, like go exercise. I support it. But if you want to be a teacher, that's a different thing.
Yeah. During COVID, I was teaching a core yoga class and most of the time I was sitting at the computer. I was not on my mat. I was sitting watching them at the computer and then I go back to my mat, demonstrate, come back to, but we created community in those classes.
Yeah.
And we did a plank challenge and we built it up over COVID. I had an 80-year-old student, Jane, who for her 80th birthday, did an 8-minute plank.
No.
And not only, but the reason I think this is a great story is because it's only
bananas.
That the other people on that class for 10 minutes, were not doing their class. They were sitting there cheering on Jane.
Oh my God, I feel teary.
Right?
Wow.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like they paid for this class, but the community was into Jane doing really, really,
of course.
really
I have
well,
goosebumps.
Right? Yeah,
I mean, that's incredible.
But so, I think when you do those things, those connect, whether it's online or in person, and everybody else is there for each other.
It's cool. I love that. Yeah, because my class, so I've been teaching it since 2013, 2014. I taught it in person, but, as of March 20th, 2020, it's been online and we're still online. And it's cool because it's like 2/3 people who I've been teaching, from my old neighborhood in Tacoma Park for, at that point it had been 7-8 years. And now it's like 1/3 of the people are from all over the world.
Yeah.
So that's really cool too, to have that kind of community. But I'd love to hear from you if you have a teacher who's listening and they're like, you know what, I actually do have a point of view and I do have a following and one of my dreams is to open a yoga studio. What are some of the first steps that you recommend to people who are starting to think about that?
Well, number one is if you're a yoga teacher, be the best yoga teacher you can be. Learn your art, learn your craft, learn how to teach, learn how to build connection. And honestly, that's to fill classes. You got to be a great teacher. Not everybody opens a studio as a teacher. Definitely investors do it. That people that are passionate about opening a studio. But I would say, don't try and compete on the franchise level. I see very profitable yoga studios built with low rent, just a space. I have some studios that have $1,000, $1,500 in rent. I started working with a client not long ago, and she came to me and she's like, my area is all I can find is $6,000 rent kind of thing. And so I'm like, well, go do better. Like I literally made her go find a broker, go have someone look for you, right? If you're paying, I know some studios here in Vancouver that are paying $14,000 in rent.
Oh my God. The studio that I taught at in Tacoma Park, which is just outside of Washington, D.C., it was $30,000 a month rent.
Yeah. That's you got to sell a lot of memberships.
Yeah.
I work with some studios that are paying $350,000 on build outs. Like I've worked with
where are people getting this money?
Well, it's their investments quite often. Quite often it's their investments, life savings.
Wow, my God.
But then, it's like, there's like all the fancy air, hot yoga studios, the air, the flooring, the sound systems, it can be done and can be done really, really well. Yoga Pod Tucson is one of my clients, and they have done it amazingly on a big scale, but they've done it super right. But I say keep your costs as low as you can.
Absolutely.
For a studio, and if you're opening a studio, do your research, point of view, but find out who are the demographics around there. Do a deep dive. What are their lifestyles, right? When you're opening a studio, quite often you're creating a schedule out of thin air. But if you do your work, I opened West Park Yoga in California, and I worked with them for a year before. And we did our homework big time on really deep dive, a lot of work. And we opened up to 220 pre-sold memberships. So they're covering costs, but it's like knowing who our audience is, what's their life, when are they available? If you can figure those things out, and what do they want, right? So I knew my 11 o'clock, I'm thinking your 10:30 audience might be similar, but my 11 o'clock slow flow class, they were not working anymore. They were retired. They were not on the alarm clock anymore. They meandered into their 11 a.m. class, and then they brought their friends with them, and then they went for lunch afterwards, right? So I knew that audience, and if they did well on a Tuesday, I could duplicate probably that Tuesday, Thursday, and a weekend.
Totally, right.
People create habits. So do your market research, keep your costs low. I think I do a really good job helping my studios do all that work, so that they can build the schedule has to be of value to people. And I think we're in I don't know, I love marketing, but what I'm seeing is a lot of people are making mistakes right now in the marketing world of 30 days for $30. They're talking price. Right? We're creating spaces where people transform their lives, and people will pay for a solution to a problem in their life. And I just had this conversation, look at CrossFit. I have friends that pay $250 a month for their CrossFit membership, right? They don't even think that's their priority. I mean, they're nuts, and their eating habits and their structure, but that place gives them what they need. Gives them community. They leave mentally better. They leave physically better, right? What's that worth? I have a personal trainer. Every time I see him, his words last in my head for a week in a positive way. And he works around my injuries. He makes me feel stronger in my body. And so I'm like, well, whatever he charged, I would probably pay. What's the price of feeling good? So I feel like, stop talking money. Let's talking about, if you know your audience, you know your point of view. Let's bring it back to point of view, right? What's your solution to their point? What's the solution to their problems? Quite often, the solution is the opposite of the problem. That's the easy way to get to it.
Say more about that.
My problem is low back. What's the opposite to that? Strengthening core, stretching out hamstring. I mean, that's really simplifying it. But, if I'm a crap marketer, What's the opposite to that? Learn how to be a good marketer or hire someone that knows how to do marketing, right? So just like to really simplify it, people will pay for a solution. What's the problem? Like my yoga for men, tight hips, hamstrings, low back. That's the problem. What's my solution? The opposite of that. Going to give you stretches and strengthening, right? So that's just a real simplified way.
I think that's good advice, even if someone's not interested in opening a studio, but just a teacher listening, like probably a lot of my audience is like, yeah, to focus in your marketing less on how affordable something can be made, especially like a lot of what I do is teach private clients. There's not really a sustainable way to make that super affordable. It's just not. It's a luxury item. So then, I mean, you have to be honest about your pricing, but you don't need to put that at the forefront, right? You want to talk about the problems that you're solving. I get that.
Yeah. Like what's your point of view, but what's your superpower? What's your uniqueness that you bring to the table, right? It's different to somebody else's, and your client's problem may be stress and anxiety, and you may have lived with anxiety all your life, but you have this superpower of a yoga teacher that can now talk to that anxiety,
right?
That you have the antidote to it. You've figured it out. But it's from you. Yeah, it's from you. It's not anybody else's point of view. It's your uniqueness that you've been talking about.
So if someone is thinking about opening a studio and they're wanting to do some of this homework, I do agree. Like in the beginning, unless you have unlimited money, then like you really want to keep your costs low. It's just like too much of a risk. But when you're talking about having people do market research to like figure out the best classes, class times, maybe pricing, is that just like looking at all the other yoga studios and kind of fitness studios in your area, or is it deeper than that?
I think it's deeper because I always say this, you don't know what another studio's expenses are, right? You don't know that they've spent $350,000 on a build out and it's going to take them 30 years to pay that back. Right. Yeah. I mean, so you don't know. So the fact that they're paying, they have an expensive membership, you can't compare yourself to. You have to be aware of what's going on in your community, and you have to be aware of your expenses. Like California is paying teachers $25 because they're saturated. Meanwhile, here in Vancouver, we're easily $50 to $70 a class, right? Wow. So it's going to be different everywhere you go. So you have to be aware of those things. You just got to really do your homework.
Yeah, like kind of be out in the world, going places, being a customer probably at lots of different places is smart too, so you can get a feel for like what you like and what you don't like as a student or as a customer.
And again, you have control over the customer experience, and that's important. Right? It's what is presented on the website needs to feel like the same thing when you come into the studio, the way you're greeted. The class has to be the ultimate class. Like for you to really differentiate and be great, you have to be great at all of that.
Right. And do you recommend, this is just more practical, but it seems like you're recommending mostly new studios that open as a membership model. So people have a set cost per month, they get a certain number of classes, or what are you recommending?
It's we'll go back to Samantha Yoga Strong. Samantha used to be register only series. I'm a massive fan of building a series. And actually Offering Tree, I just did a webinar with them, and that can be found on their website. But creating a signature series, I like a bit of a mix. I like I like a few pre-registered series on the menu because they pay up front. They create a customer journey that you can really make people feel confident no matter where they're at to go on to your other offerings. But I mean, there are so many different models now. There's hybrid models, some online, some hybrid. The most common, though, and I think people expect, is having a membership. But is that membership of value? Meaning, can they get in enough times in the week to feel that when they look at their credit card balance that I got my value out of that. So, having a $170 membership, but you've only got 2 classes a day at very specific times, that might not be of value to somebody, right? But if you've got a couple in the morning, a couple of the evening, and some weekend ones, and people can get in, you've done the homework on the schedule on that when people are available, that's going to be of value to people if you're doing the membership model.
Do you have a way that you recommend teachers like poll or survey their students or their potential students to find out what class times work for them? Because this is something I run into with teachers that I'm mentoring who are just running their own like 1 or 2 classes, which is something teachers that I mentor do a lot of, because I recommend like building a little something that's just yours, even if you're also teaching in a studio. But what happens a lot is students will say they want an early morning class.
Yeah,
like they'll have like 100% of the respondents say they want an early morning class. You put it on the
6
schedule,
a.m. class, it peters
and then
off.
no one comes.
Yeah.
No one comes. So is there like and we've discussed this, and I've run in this with my virtual studio too. It's like I'll ask for feedback and get a lot of people to respond.
Yeah,
but like
people have good intentions, but then they won't actually get out of the pajamas in the morning.
And so that's why I've said, you decide as a teacher, like when you want to teach, put your stake in the ground, and then you have to just keep that class forever, because then eventually like enough people will come to your class, like it, and figure it out a way to get there. But if every month, every 2 months, you're changing your class time to try to meet your students' needs, I think that then people can't ever like commit to it. So I don't know if you have a better system.
From a studio point of view, you want to build all the classes to be, I knew in my studio that 8 people covered costs. That wasn't profit. Yeah. But I knew in my head 8 people covered my expenses roughly. So always knowing that. And you can't be doing loss leader classes forever. And so for studios, what I recommend is going by season and putting on the website these dates. These classes are from this date to this date, so that your students get used to tweaks, like not massive changes. But if a class has got 2 people come into it for 3 months, it's an easy conversation to say to those people, I know you've been committed to these classes, but you can see that, we've been trying to make it work. It's not working. I'm really, really sorry. You might upset 2 people, but you're probably going to save your business if you're not.
Sure. No, I understand as a studio owner with overhead.
I believe in tweaking it, but I say it's not always the time, right? So it's like, I believe quarterly that studios should have discussions with the teachers every quarter, and we should look at the classes together. And can we fix this? Teacher, time, style. I knew my Wednesday class had 30 people for the longest time. And then for the weirdest reason, halfway through studio ownership, I was having 8 to 10 people come to it. Like, what happened? It was just things changed and evolved. So we have to always look at those things and adapt to them. So I think online might be a little bit different, but in a studio setting, I think we've got to look at things kind of quarterly and make small tweaks.
Maybe just change one thing.
Yeah, or see if we can fix it. Can I help develop that teacher to teach that class as well as I do?
Right.
That's the power that a studio owner has, is to help. I used to teach way more of my classes than I needed to when I first started. It was a lot about me.com. But then I stepped back and I went, I'm going to teach just these 4 or 5 classes that feed me and that I get excited about and don't exhaust me. And the rest of the time, I'm going to build and empower my team.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
And I think, studio owners, if they can help, well, let's put it back to you. How can studio owners help their team be better teachers?
Yeah, I mean, I think observing their teaching and giving them feedback is really invaluable. It's time consuming and it can be hard as a teacher to have your boss observing you, but I think it's the best way to get outside feedback. You can also observe yourself. You can record yourself teaching, listen back to it, take your own class and decide what wasn't clear or what you want to do better. So I think some kind of observation where you're getting regular feedback is really helpful. And then I think if as a studio owner and a longtime teacher, again, you have a clear point of view about what good quality teaching looks like, then you write it down. You start building out a body of work. Like this is what I prioritize. This is what I want my students to experience. This is the best way, I think, to recommend that you do that. You can also bring outside people in. I'm going to be doing this for Sam, our person, and for other studio owners too, is coming in just to do like a weekend of teacher development to like teach some of these things that I focus on, teaching without demonstrating. A lot of people don't know how to do that. Seeing and understanding bodies in motion, understanding what you're looking at and how to address that, kind of taking poses and being able to break them down to their component parts to understand how to best create prep sequences. I think just some continuing education really goes a long way.
Yeah. I say honestly, quarterly. Like if you're a studio, I think should be having a staff get together quarterly. And I did that and they always showed up. Like I hear a lot of this, I don't want to ask them to, but I'm like, well, I actually gave them a lot. We did photo shoots. I brought in photographers that they could use those photographs themselves on their own things. I brought in teachers to help develop them, people like yourself. But I think you're only as good as your teachers.
Yeah, for sure. And, you can be a new teacher and, still bring like a really grounded, thoughtful presence to your teaching. No question about that. But this like sort of more specific point of view is something that comes with experience, So you just have to like get out there and start teaching, and like be an inquiry about the ways that you want to grow and evolve. It's just a constant evolution.
And studio owners, you have the incredible space to be able to create amazing teachers, help co-create amazing and develop amazing teachers.
And I think, studio owners have an incredibly valuable and important role. And I think we need so much more of this. I think we've really lost as a culture. I can certainly speak in the United States. We've lost a lot of our third spaces. The idea of a third space is like your home is one space, work is another, and then third space is where you gather as a community. Yeah. And I think we have been losing those for 20, 30 years and then really lost a lot during the pandemic. And I think yoga studios can be this incredibly important, powerful third space where people are learning together, they're studying, they're moving, they're practicing, they're connecting. And it can be such a like community hub. And I think we need that now more than ever.
There's a lot that a studio owner can do with a space. Is that you can do good work in a space. My studio, we raised $40,000 over 10 years for the local hospice. However, I'm going to preface that was my charity of choice. I was affected by hospice. My mum passed away and I was amazed by the hospice people. I then took the training and then I sat on the board for 5 years as vice president. It was important to me. So when I spoke my point of view to my students, they showed up. When the studio owner purchased the second owner purchased my studio, it wasn't his thing and the events petered out, right? But if he'd come in and go, okay, my thing's diabetes, right? And that was his point of view, that would have thrived. But you have this, but we did third week of November, pre-Christmas shopping day. Like you can create events that do good work in the community.
Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. Yeah, there's a lot.
I'm going to throw some questions at you that I didn't tell you I was going to ask.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me something that people wouldn't normally know about you.
Well, the answer I often give to this question is that I cannot ride a bike. Really, I'm like pretty athletic. Like I was a dancer. I was like pretty good at surfing, but like as soon as like a simple machine is involved, I am very awkward. So I really can't. I mean, I haven't tried in a long time, but I cannot really ride a bike. Yeah.
You're better on your own 2 feet on the yoga mat.
Much better. No props, just me and my body. Yeah, exactly. What about you? What's something that people would know about you?
Oh, this is a weird one. I I am a total Mac geek, like an Apple geek. Like my relaxing is reading Apple blogs. So my friends never buy a phone or a computer or an iPad before speaking to me because I'm always like, well, next week the 17th coming out.
There you go.
Yeah, I read all the rumor sites. So that's kind of
that's cute.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
I see your fancy headphones. They're very shiny.
I do like my geeky stuff. Yeah. If you were a yoga pose, what would you be and why?
Yikes. Well, I am the mom of a 3-year-old living in Washington, D.C. in 2025. So I'm going to go with child's pose because I just want to do a fetal position. That's an interesting question. Yeah, that's first thought, best thought. I'll go with balasana. Yeah. What about you?
I kind of like Ardha Chandrasana.
Oh, I do love that pose.
Half moon. Yeah. There's just, I remember there's just a lot to learn. The stabilizing leg.
It's a challenging one to be in that much external rotation.
Yeah. And I remember it took a long time, and I used the wall for a long time. But yeah, when you just that foundation, foot to hip, and then once you found that foundation, it's kind of like business and life. But once you found that foundation, then there's this expansion out into all the limbs.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's cool. Mm-hmm.
Where can people find you?
Yes. So my website is francescacervero.com. Everything you need is there. You can get the podcast. You can get online group classes with me, information about private yoga, information about the mentoring I do with teachers. Yeah. And then if you want me on social, it's just Instagram, Francesca Cervero. Same thing. Yeah.
Be in my show notes too.
Cool. And how about you?
Yoga Biz Champ on everything. So if anybody's interested in a 30-minute free chat with me to see whether I might be a fit to help them, it's yogabizchamp.com/book. And then I think I hang out on Instagram the most under Yoga Biz Champ, and I'm on YouTube and TikTok, but I don't hang out there as much. And then the podcast, so all under Yoga Biz Champ.
Smart to have it all have the same name.
It didn't used to be that way. This is probably 3.0. I started off as michaelj.ca, then it was Michael J Online. Now it's all just under Yoga Biz Champ.
No, it's smart. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
We're going to be on both episodes, the same episode on both of our podcasts. And I really love finding people like yourself where we can really jam out on this stuff. And for me, for the yoga studio point of view, you're only as good as your teachers. So empower them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I work with a lot of very experienced teachers do mentoring with me, new teachers, but also people who've been teaching 15, 20 years. I think, certainly when I run into people who are thinking about the next phase, if they want to rent a space and open a small studio, I'm really happy to have you as a resource for them.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for tuning in, champs. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to this channel. It means a lot. And if you're ready to open your own studio or grow your current one, visit yogabizchamp.link/YouTube to book your free strategy call with myself and explore my starter studio and grower studio packages. And you'll also get access to all of my free Yoga Biz Champ resources, yogabizchamp.link/YouTube. And you can check out other insights and follow me on all social media platforms at Yoga Biz Champ. See you next time.